No vehicle or vessel better symbolizes the Clone Wars than the LAAT/I gunship. These fearsome attack craft served as the backbone of the Grand Army of the Republic from the First Battle of Geonosis to the end of the war, and served quite well. The LAAT-I knit the Republic military together, connecting the Navy with the Army and various Army units with each other, and its versatility meant that there was always a use for it on the battlefield, no matter the environment or tactical scenario. Without these gunships, the Galactic Republic may well have lost the war, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at why.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The low-altitude assault transport infantry variant was developed by Rothana Heavy Engineering, a subsidiary of Kuat Drive Yards. Rothana had been contracted by the Kaminoans to design new heavy vehicles for the GAR, and together with the ATTE, the LAAT/I was one of the most well-known models it produced in response. The Kaminoans commissioned thousands of these gunships, intending for them to fill the role of air support. LAAT/I gunships were extremely agile, capable of reaching speeds of up to 620 km per hour in atmosphere without losing the ability to turn on a dime. They were intended for use in planets' lower atmospheres, where they could take advantage of mountains and canyons to take cover from artillery. They were powered by large generators located just behind the cockpit, which fed power to weapon systems, repulsor lifts, and engines through armored conduits. These craft were mainly kept aloft by heavy-duty repulsor lifts. Gunships were mainly supported by large repulsor arrays on their undersides, while additional repulsors on their wingtips and tails controlled roll. LAAT/Is were propelled by a pair of engines, which, together with the craft's fuel tank, were located at the rear of the gunship for safety reasons. These gunships didn't come with onboard shield generators, an unfortunate consequence of the compact nature of the craft, but they were well armored and equipped with physical blast shields to compensate. Republic gunships were operated by a crew of 4, a pilot, a co-pilot, and 2 gunners. The gunners were optional, and manned the 2 ball turrets that some LAAT models featured on either side of the troop hold, while the pilot and co-pilot occupied the craft's twin cockpits. The pilot, who sat in the forward cockpit, was responsible for steering the gunship and managing the troop hold, while the co-pilot operated the gunship's various weapon systems and could take over steering in an emergency. Both the pilot and the co-pilot were in a bit of an awkward position on the craft. Their cockpits were exposed, and they could only access them via crew ladders in the ceiling of the forward hold, which weren't ideal for escape in emergency situations. Fortunately for the pilots, however, Rothana's engineers foresaw this being an issue, and thus the whole cockpit section of the LAAT/I could eject from the craft and serve as an escape pod. The LAAT/I was extremely well armed. The craft featured 3 turreted anti-personnel laser cannons, 2 on the chin and 1 just below the engines, which could absolutely shred even the toughest enemy infantry, allowing these gunships to easily clear out landing zones. They also featured 4 composite beam laser turrets, 1 on each wingtip and 2 positioned in front of the troop hold, which produced high power energy beams with pinpoint accuracy. The 2 that flanked the troop hold could be removed and replaced with armored doors, and were individually manned and operated by clone gunners, who usually used them to target enemy units on the battlefield below. The wingtip turrets were remotely operated and typically employed against far-off hard targets. LAATs featured more than laser cannons, however. They came with more than their fair share of ordnance as well. Their main weapons were a pair of sizable mass driver missile launchers located at the top of the craft, which featured magazines of 30 rockets each. The kinds of rockets LAATs carried varied from mission to mission and could range from short-range homing missiles and anti-personnel frag rounds to high explosive and armor-piercing rounds. Lastly, LAAT/I gunships carried 4 light air-to-air rockets on the underside of each wing. But the LAAT/I wasn't just a weapons platform. Its main function after all was troop transport. They could each carry nearly a full platoon of clone troopers in their main holds, which were protected by the drooping wings and heavily armored doors of the craft. The main hold of the LAAT/I was designed to protect its occupants as much as possible while also allowing them to provide covering fire for ground troops from the air, and featured inertial compensators that allowed clones to stand while the craft was in flight. Additionally, a rack in the rear of the main hold allowed these gunships to also carry 4 speeder bikes, which could be deployed through a rear hatch. The gunship's forward compartment, which was located in its armored nose, could be atmospherically sealed and contained ammunition stores, backup equipment, medical supplies, and IM-6 medical droids. All told, the LAAT/I gunship was an incredibly useful piece of equipment. It could rapidly and safely deploy a large number of clones onto the battlefield at once, especially when used in large numbers. For example, the 66 LAAT/Is carried aboard an Acclamator-class assault ship could deploy nearly 2,000 clones in a single wave. Additionally, they could serve as highly versatile and tremendously destructive aircraft in their own right, with each gunship carrying enough weaponry to lay waste to half a battlefield. The Republic couldn't possibly have asked for a better craft, and the LAAT/I remained popular for the entire length of the Clone Wars for good reason. But that's not all there is to say about the LAAT/I. They weren't just a godsend to the Republic because of what they were capable of. Their role in the wider Grand Army of the Republic was also a huge asset. You see, when the Kaminoans yielded control of the GAR to the Republic, they also handed over the standardized battle strategies they had used to train the clones. Republic tactics in the early stages of the Clone Wars relied heavily on the blueprint the Kaminoans had made for ground assault, as they were still scrambling to assemble a competent military high command at the time. The Republic only survived the Confederacy's opening campaigns because this tactical blueprint actually worked pretty well, in no small part due to the LAAT/I. The Kaminoans built their standard plan around 5 assets that they knew the GAR would have in good supply: clone troopers, ATTEs, SPA-HATs, LAATs, and acclamators. As the plan went, the assault ships would begin the ground assault, bombarding targets from the air and disgorging swarms of LAATs. The gunships would deploy about 2,000 clones and 14 ATTEs in a massive first wave, and then speed back to the assault ships to pick up a second. The first wave would begin clearing out an assembly area where the assault ships could land, continually reinforced and resupplied by the gunships, following which the assault ships would land and deploy everything else en masse. LAAT/Is would then provide air support as the SPHATs and the ATTEs marched to the fore, obliterating everything in their paths. The battle plan relied heavily on LAATs, and when put into practice, the LAATs carried their weight and then some. In the early battles of the Clone Wars, Republic gunships ruled the skies, shooting down anything that challenged their air supremacy and raining death upon Separatist ground forces. They proved to be so reliable at safely transporting troops to the surface that some Jedi generals actually took to using them as aerial command posts, which they could use to get a bird's eye view of the battlefield. LAAT/I gunships also had one last role that made them absolutely essential. They served as mobile comms relays for GAR battle nets. The Republic's clone troopers were trained to fight as a massive collective force, and this relied heavily on communication. The helmets that came with Phase 1 armor were all equipped with state-of-the-art internal communication systems, which received command signals and audio feeds from other clones and sent live video feed of the battle back to the base. The gunships actually played a vital role in this process. They picked up on and boosted signals from individual clones, contributing greatly to unit cohesion and connecting frontline troops to command. This allowed the GAR to fight with efficiency and coordination that rivaled the CIS droid armies, which was no small feat since the CIS used central control computers to direct vast armies. Without the LAAT/I, the Republic would have been annihilated by the Confederacy in the first few months of the war. Early victories like the First Battle of Geonosis and the Battle of Moonlist were won in large part due to these gunships. Of course, the Confederacy eventually devised counters to the LAAT/I. Artillery coupled with swarms of starfighters did a great job of clearing the skies of these devastating craft, as the CIS demonstrated in the Second Battle of Geonosis. However, by that point, the Republic had started to rely less on the LAAT/I and more on a diverse array of newer vehicles, which meant this didn't end up being the crippling blow the Confederacy had hoped it would be. The damage was already done. The LAAT/I had successfully blunted the Confederacy's early advantage, and it continued to serve the Republic well for the rest of the war. So that's our look at the LAAT/I gunship, the workhorse of the Grand Army of the Republic. But what do you think? Would you like us to take a look at the ATTE, the LAAT's partner in crime, next? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.